Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. A quiet ex-medic retreats to the woods to escape chaos until a power-hungry HOA president declares war on his freedom. Trespassing patrols, forged maps, and a militia of veterans stand between her and the land she craves. This isn't suburbia anymore. This is private property warfare. There's something sacred about waking up to nothing but wind in the pines and the smell of your own damn coffee. No traffic, no HOA newsletters shoved under your door, no bored middle managers trying to cite you for painting your shutters the wrong shade of beige. Just you, your land, and your peace. That's the life I built when I left the city 6 years ago and bought this 20-acre slice of forested freedom in rural Moore County, North Carolina. Name's Robbie Goodman, 43 years old, former combat medic, and now full-time caretaker of my own damn sanity. The property used to belong to an old tobacco farmer, long gone. Came with a run-down house, a barn that leaned like a drunk, a half-rotted dock on the creek, and enough trees to disappear in. It wasn't much by Zillow standards, but for me, it was exactly what I needed. Quiet, wild, and unclaimed by committees or neighborhood bylaws. I spent the first year patching roofs, clearing deadfall, and fixing up the barn until it could pass inspection, registered it as an agricultural structure with the county, and used it for what barns are good at: storage, tools, firewood, and the occasional nap in the hay when the summer heat made the main house feel like a toaster oven. 2 horses live out back, Buck and Nellie, both retired from trail service. The dock's good enough for fishing, and I've got a solar backup rig tied into a gas generator that keeps the essentials humming when storms knock the grid out. This ain't a survival bunker, but it ain't a city condo either, and I like it that way. I document most of the maintenance and outdoor work on my survival blog. It started as therapy, but people latched on. Ex-military guys, off-grid enthusiasts, a couple of grumpy electricians. Somehow, it's grown into a bit of a thing. Willow Heights, the HOA plastered suburb just past my northern fence line, came much later. One of those rapid growth prefab communities with matching mailboxes, monthly dues, and weaponized newsletters. I watched the bulldozers come in 3 years ago, then the sod, then the speed bumps. At first, they stayed on their side of the line. But last year, their president, Karen Bexley, started poking her nose in like a squirrel smelling propane. She sent a letter, then 2. Then a courtesy visit that I ended by reminding her what a no trespassing sign means under state law. Karen has a face that looks like it's constantly disapproving of background noise. Bleach blonde helmet hair, pastel cardigans, clipboard practically grafted to her arm. She believes rules are religion, and she's the pope of suburban conformity. Unfortunately for her, my property isn't within her jurisdiction. That didn't sit well. She told me once, flat out, that she dreams of a county where all landowners follow the same standards. I told her I'd dream of a county where people mind their business and stop naming their labradoodles after French desserts. Anyway, this weekend wasn't about HOA drama. It was about old friends and campfires. Troy, Justin, and Cortez, brothers I served with back in Afghanistan, were rolling in for our annual fall hunting week. We don't always hunt, to be honest. Mostly we grill meat, drink bourbon, argue about fishing knots, and scare the raccoons with bad country music. They brought their usual gear: camper trailers, military-style duffels, radios, and enough MREs to survive a blizzard. Cortez even brought his hand-built generator and a satellite uplink he swears is strictly for fantasy football. We set up the fire ring just outside the barn. Everyone was in good spirits. Troy, the biggest of the bunch, helped me haul firewood. Justin tinkered with the antenna setup. Cortez, as usual, was already testing the coffee pot like it was mission-critical equipment. We'd barely been there 2 hours before the jokes started about installing claymores near the fence to keep HOA Karens at bay. I laughed. But some part of me, just a sliver, wondered if maybe I should have taken that no trespassing sign down and put up something more direct, like barbed wire. Or a banner that says, "You're not in Kansas anymore, Karen." By nightfall, we had everything in place. Lanterns lit, bourbon poured, and a steel grill hissing over open flame. No phones, no noise, just old stories and honest silence. I remember thinking, maybe too soon, that this was going to be the quietest weekend of the year. It wouldn't be. It was just after 6 on Sunday morning when I heard the chime from the motion sensor near the north gate. I was inside the barn, half awake, sipping coffee from a dented metal mug, while watching the propane heater warm up the corner where Cortez had set up his gear station. The guys were still asleep in their trailers, judging by the lack of swearing or the smell of bacon. I figured maybe it was a deer brushing the fence. That sensor catches everything from wind-blown branches to suicidal possums. Still, habit is habit. I tossed on my jacket, clipped my side radio, and stepped out into the early morning chill, boots crunching frost-stiff gravel. Sun hadn't crested the trees yet, and the air was damp enough to make the bones ache a little. I glanced at the trail cam monitor mounted on the porch post. 3 figures, mid-fence, 2 men, 1 woman. They weren't moving fast or sneaky. They were purposeful. Matching uniforms, clipboard, tablet. Well, shit. I toggled the radio. Heads up. We got movement on the north side, not wildlife. Troy responded with a grunt. You mean not Karen wildlife? Worse. Think HOA patrol. That got them moving. In under a minute, all 3 of them came out of their trailers like they were back on active duty. No shouting, no panic, just quick hands zipping jackets, checking gear, flipping on their headset mics. We weren't armed, not visibly, but let's just say we didn't exactly look like picnic dads either. Troy, who looks like he bench presses tractors, slung his hunting bag over one shoulder and motioned toward the barn. By the time we approached, the trespassers were about 20 feet inside the property line, walking straight toward the barn. The woman held a tablet scanning the structure. One of the men was photographing the firewood rack. The other was writing something on a clipboard like he was preparing for a county audit. They didn't look up until we were 10 feet away. Cortez spoke first, voice flat and commanding. Step away from the barn and drop your clipboard, sir. The woman flinched. The guy with the clipboard froze mid-scribble. The third one, taller, glasses, in a faux military vest with HOA enforcement stitched across it, lifted a hand like he thought he was diffusing a hostage situation. We're just performing a visual safety inspection. There was a report of unregistered storage and potential code violations. You climbed over a locked gate onto private property, I interrupted. That's not inspection. That's trespassing. The woman cleared her throat and attempted professional calm. Sir, under HOA Article 12, Section 4, any structure within 100 feet of a shared boundary line is subject to visual compliance review. I raised an eyebrow. Visual compliance review doesn't override North Carolina trespass law, sweetheart. And again, for the record, my property isn't part of your goddamn HOA. The man with the clipboard, clearly the junior of the bunch, looked visibly uncomfortable. He shifted his weight, looked at the fence, then at Cortez, who had just turned on his helmet cam and pointed it squarely at the trio. You're being recorded, he said, by this and the trail cams. Anything you say or do is being documented for potential legal action. The tall one started to respond, but Troy took a step forward. That shut him up real quick. I pulled out my phone and called the sheriff's department. Line rang once. Sheriff's dispatch. This is Beth. This is Robbie Goodman. I need a unit out at my property. 20 acres off County Road 7, north boundary. I've got 3 individuals who trespassed over my locked gate, are currently photographing and documenting my private structures under false HOA authority. Beth didn't hesitate. Sending a car now, Robbie. Sheriff Danvers is on rotation. He knows the place. Thanks. I'll keep him here. I ended the call and looked back at the group. The clipboard guy was now quietly trying to erase something on his paper. The tall one looked like he wanted to run. The woman, she was trying to take another photo, like nothing had happened. You do that again, I said, and I'll consider it an act of harassment. Put the damn tablet down and wait. 10 minutes passed in silence, except for birds and the occasional awkward cough. Cortez kept the camera rolling. Troy stood with arms crossed like a statue that moonlighted as a wrecking ball. Justin, cool as ice, leaned against the barn door, watching. We heard the tires on gravel before we saw the car. Sheriff Mike Danvers pulled up in his County Ford Explorer, door already open as the engine stopped. Well, he said, stepping out, adjusting his belt. Ain't even 8, and we got trespassers in polo shirts. Morning, Robbie. Morning, Sheriff. Thought you might want to stretch your legs. He turned toward the group. Let me guess. Karen sent y'all. Clipboard guy nodded immediately, like a student being called on in math class. The tall one tried to regain composure. We were instructed to visually inspect this structure for improper storage and potential ordinance violations related to community safety. Danvers blinked. This isn't your community. We believe the barn may be in violation of "This isn't under HOA jurisdiction," the sheriff cut him off. "It's a private freehold parcel registered since the 1940s. I've seen the deed myself. That gate you climbed is legally marked. You all just bought yourselves some criminal trespass charges, depending how Robbie wants to proceed." The woman scoffed. "We're just trying to ensure public safety." Danvers turned slowly. "Lady, the only thing unsafe right now is you pissing off 4 veterans who live in the woods with better radios than I've got at the station." She went quiet. "Now," he added, "unless y'all want to take that discussion to the magistrate, I suggest you hop back over that gate and tell Karen to call me direct next time." They didn't argue. They left in awkward silence, clambering over the fence like kids caught sneaking into a pool. One of them dropped their clipboard. Nobody picked it up. I turned to the sheriff. "You want breakfast? Justin's got bacon on." He grinned. "Thought you'd never ask." The sheriff didn't stay for breakfast, though I offered. He had paperwork to start, he said, and judging by the look on his face, he already knew who'd be calling to scream at him before lunchtime. Karen Bexley had that reputation. I could practically picture her pacing in her kitchen, still wearing her floral robe, composing her righteous fury over a second cup of decaf. Danvers promised to swing by the next day for a written statement. Then he climbed back into his cruiser, leaving a tire print in my gravel like a signature. The morning stayed quiet for a bit. The guys tried to lighten the mood. Justin poured bourbon into the coffee and said we should start a betting pool on how long it would take Karen to show up in person. My guess was by noon. Troy said by brunch. I should have bet money because she beat both estimates. At 10:30 sharp, a white Lexus SUV rolled up to the locked gate like it owned the place. It idled for a few seconds, engine humming, before the driver's window rolled down and that unmistakable voice carried across the fence line. "Mr. Goodman, we need to talk about your activities." I sighed, handed Cortez my mug, and walked up the drive. The others followed, not hovering, just there, arms crossed, calm, but clearly not amused. Karen stepped out of the car, heels clicking against the gravel. She wore a pink blazer, pearl earrings, and an expression that could peel paint. "I just spoke with Sheriff Danvers," she began, already heated, "and I am absolutely appalled that he allowed this situation to be misrepresented. You are engaging in potentially dangerous behavior on property that borders a family community." "Morning to you too," I said, resting a hand on the fence post. "Care to explain why your people jumped my gate this morning?" "They were conducting a safety assessment. We've had multiple complaints from residents who've seen armed men, military equipment, and unregulated generators on your property." "We have bylaws, Mr. Goodman, standards." "Karen," I cut in, "your bylaws stop at that fence." She narrowed her eyes. "Technically, the jurisdictional boundary of Willow Heights extends 100 feet into the undeveloped buffer zone." "Not according to the county registrar," I said, "and certainly not according to the sheriff." Her voice climbed an octave. "Do you expect me to sit idly by while a group of armed veterans plays war games next door to children's bedrooms? People are frightened." Behind me, Troy muttered, "Lady, your people were the only ones playing war games this morning." Justin coughed to hide a laugh. Cortez raised his phone and quietly started filming. Karen's head snapped toward them. "Turn that off. You do not have my consent to record." Cortez didn't move. "Ma'am, North Carolina's a one-party consent state. You're good." I could see her pulse throbbing at her temple. She turned back to me, voice trembling with fury. "I will not tolerate this intimidation, this entire setup, these radios, these weapons. It's a threat to the peace of our community." "They're hunting rifles, Karen," I said, "and they're stored legally. You know what's actually a threat to peace?" "Trespassing onto a veteran's land at dawn with a clipboard." Her tone shifted from anger to indignation. "We had every right to inspect. Your barn is too close to our residential zoning line. It's practically a commercial warehouse." "Then you can take that complaint to the county," I said, keeping my voice even. "Until then, you and your people stay the hell off my property." She stepped closer to the gate, waving her tablet like a gavel. "Don't you dare speak to me that way. I am the elected president of Willow Heights Homeowners Association." "Congratulations," Troy muttered. "You want a medal or a map of your jurisdiction?" That was when she lost it completely. Karen reached over the gate, trying to shove her tablet into my face, jabbing at a photo on the screen. "Look, right there, gasoline containers stacked by the wall. That's a fire hazard. We have proof." I didn't even look at the picture. "Those are kerosene cans for the heater, and you're standing on my no trespass boundary right now." "Then move the damn boundary," she snapped. Cortez stopped filming for a moment, looked at me, then at her. "Ma'am, you might want to back up a bit." "Excuse me?" she barked, taking a step forward instead. That was her mistake. The gate, a heavy iron one I'd built myself, creaked under her weight as she leaned into it, ranting about property values and community standards. Then she shoved it, just enough for it to rattle open a few inches. Troy moved instinctively, stepping forward, not threateningly, just blocking her path. Her hand caught his chest, a shove more dramatic than dangerous, but enough. Cortez got it all on camera. Karen froze as the sheriff's SUV pulled up again. He must have doubled back from his route. Danvers stepped out, saw her position halfway inside my gate, inside the sigh of a man who already knew how much paperwork he was about to write. "Karen," he said flatly, "please step away from that gate." "This man assaulted me," she shrieked, pointing at Troy. They're armed. They're dangerous." Troy folded his arms. "You're the one who pushed me, ma'am." Danvers looked at me, then at her, then at Cortez's still recording phone. "Ma'am, I just saw the footage. You put hands on him." He raised a hand. "Karen, don't make this harder. You're under arrest for trespassing and simple assault. Please place your hands behind your back." The color drained from her face as he read her rights. She sputtered threats about calling the mayor, the governor, the homeowners board. None of them came to help her. Danvers led her to the cruiser, his patience visibly thinning. I watched in silence, part of me amused, part of me tired. When the car door shut, Cortez whispered, "That's going to look great on YouTube." I didn't laugh, but I didn't disagree either. By Monday morning, the footage had already made the rounds. Cortez uploaded a trimmed version to my blog and cross-posted it on a few vet forums and local Facebook groups under the tasteful title, "HOA President Arrested After Attacking Veteran on His Own Land." I wasn't trying to go viral, but north. Carolina's got a long memory when it comes to overreach, and folks love a story where the clipboard loses. By noon, I had 3 local reporters in my inbox, 2 podcast invites, and 1 phone call from a guy claiming to be writing a book about the dark empire of HOAs. I ignored most of them. This wasn't supposed to be a spectacle. It was supposed to be a quiet week with old friends, not a PR war with a woman who weaponized a homeowners association. Still, I knew I couldn't let it drop. Karen hadn't just trespassed. She'd crossed a line, literally, legally, and with enough gall to do it in heels. So I sat down with Sheriff Danvers and filed the official complaint. The charges would include criminal trespass, simple assault, interference with a lawful investigation, attempted property inspection under false authority, and 1 count of general idiocy, unofficial but well documented. Danvers didn't laugh, but his mustache twitched like it wanted to. After that, I called my lawyer. Savannah Lawrence wasn't just a family friend. She was a JAG Corps bulldog who left the Army but never lost her love of crushing bureaucracy. She'd handled my property paperwork back when I bought the land, and now she was more than happy to take up the cause. She tried to enforce HOA jurisdiction beyond its mapped boundary, Savannah said, skimming through my documents and the video. Jesus, that's not just trespass, that's attempted regulatory fraud. How the hell did she get elected? I assume she threatened to revoke their Christmas lights. Savannah gave me a tight smile. We're filing a cease and desist today. Then a civil suit, defamation, trespass, endangerment, and attempted regulatory overreach. I want every action she took, every letter, every patrol, tied directly to her HOA presidency. She'll say she acted on behalf of the community. She can say what she wants. But the moment she crossed onto private land, used her title to justify it, and laid hands on someone, she exposed her board to joint liability. That was why I liked Savannah. She spoke like a bayonet, sharp, direct, and meant to draw blood. By Wednesday, she'd sent the demand letter to Willow Heights HOA, notifying them of pending litigation. She also dropped copies to the local paper, the county clerk, and a state-level property rights watchdog group. Karen hadn't just pissed off a veteran. She'd triggered a war with someone who'd read more zoning laws than she had baked casseroles. But Karen, true to form, didn't stay quiet. On Thursday morning, a full-page ad ran in the Willow Heights Weekly with the headline, "Safety or Sovereignty? The Threat Next Door." It was a rambling, thinly veiled piece of paranoia. She accused me of harboring a paramilitary compound, claimed our unauthorized weaponry was visible from children's bedrooms, and alleged that my barn had been converted into a tactical bunker. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my eggs. She called your generator a mobile signal warfare device. Troy read aloud, howling. That's not even a real thing. It is if you believe in chemtrails, Cortez added. But this wasn't just lunacy, it was defamation. Public, printed, and distributed to 600 mailboxes. Savannah filed an emergency addendum to the civil suit, citing reputational harm and libel. I want a copy of that ad framed in the courtroom, she said, just so the judge can appreciate the full idiocy in context. HOA's official board tried to distance themselves. Their interim statement claimed Karen had acted independently and that the HOA does not condone any actions taken beyond its authorized borders. But we'd already collected 3 newsletters, 2 internal memos, and 1 leaked email in which Karen bragged that she had assembled a patrol force to monitor adjacent properties. She even referred to my barn as Sector Blue. Sector Blue. Jesus Christ. The county clerk's office got involved next. Turns out Karen had filed a formal request 2 months prior to expand the HOA's jurisdiction to include all bordering lots within reasonable sightline proximity. That included mine. The request had been denied, repeatedly, but Karen had never told her board. Savannah grinned when she saw the clerk's note. She lied to her board, faked authority, and acted on rejected paperwork. That's textbook abuse of governance. What's the next step? I asked. We bleed them dry in court. It didn't take long for the press to catch wind. A regional paper published a piece titled HOA President Arrested, Accused of Expanding Power Beyond Borders. And by Friday, a local NBC affiliate ran a segment with my trail cam footage. They even slowed down the moment Karen shoved Troy with dramatic music like it was a true crime special. Troy watched it deadpan. Next time, I'm wearing my dress blues. Karen was released on bail, but she'd stopped driving past my gate. Probably on lawyer's orders. Her house had gone quiet, her mailbox stuffed with HOA complaints from her own residents. Word was, at least 4 families were threatening to withhold dues until she stepped down. I wasn't gloating. Yet. But I was damn sure writing everything down, time-stamping every lie, every incident, every insult. The barn stayed locked, the trail cams stayed hot. And Savannah, she was just getting started. The thing about bureaucrats like Karen is they never stop. Even when you catch them red-handed, even when the law starts breathing down their necks, they double down. That Friday night, just as I was finishing up wiring another set of floodlights around the back fence, Savannah called me. She's hired a PR firm, she said flatly. Of course she has. Eagle Crest Communications. They specialize in reputation management for HOAs and local government officials under investigation. God help them, I muttered. Hope they charged her double. It didn't take long before the spin started. A glossy mailer arrived in every box in Willow Heights and even made its way to my driveway. Concerned community values what really happened at Sector Blue. It showed a dramatic black and white still of Troy standing outside the barn with a radio in hand, cut from our own trail cam footage, and labeled him as Armed Militia Presence. Another image showed my barn under cloudy skies, filtered to look like a war bunker. It accused me of stockpiling unlicensed tactical gear and implied our cookout was a combat survival drill. The audacity would have been hilarious if it weren't so calculated. I scanned the mailer and handed it to Savannah. They're framing us as paramilitary extremists. Yeah, she said, fuming. They're not just defending Karen, they're constructing a false narrative to discredit you before the suit lands. They're not going to get away with it. I already submitted it as evidence of coordinated defamation. This isn't about PR anymore. This is active character assassination. Troy grunted from the porch, sipping coffee. So, what's next? She sends a drone strike. No, I said. She sends an inspector. Which, as it turns out, she did. Saturday morning, a man in a gray sedan with a magnetic HOA regional assessment sticker parked just outside my property line. He stepped out wearing a vest labeled Zoning Review Consultant, clipboard in hand, and tried to take pictures of my barn from the roadside. I watched him through binoculars while flipping pancakes on the griddle. The guys were still in for the weekend. We weren't exactly in camo anymore, but something about 4 veterans eating flapjacks next to rifles on a stand must have made the inspector hesitate. He left without approaching, but I didn't let that go. I called Sheriff Danvers. Robbie, he said, we've got complaints flying in both directions. Karen's claiming she's being surveilled by armed radicals, and her board is in meltdown mode. She sent another fake inspector, this time labeled as zoning. Not a county employee. Not even close. Danvers cursed. She's spiraling, and I just got off the phone with the county records office. They found a batch of unauthorized requests tied to her email. Looks like she tried to revise an old topography report to reflect adjusted boundary zones. You know what that means? She forged a map. Yep. We both knew what that meant. Felony territory. Tampering with zoning or cadastral records wasn't just a slap on the wrist, it was criminal fraud. Savannah wasted no time. She requested a full audit of HOA communications, focusing on land use documents. Then she filed an emergency injunction against Willow Heights, forbidding them from conducting any outreach or inspections beyond their mapped jurisdiction until the case resolved. That afternoon, I took the guys down to the barn, and we did what military men do best when tensions rise. We built a fire pit, grilled some elk steaks, and stayed quiet while the flames danced. Cortez was polishing a field camera when he looked up and said, "You know she's not just crazy. She's strategic." "How do you mean?" "She's not doing all this because she hates you. She's doing it because she wants your land." It clicked. I'd been so focused on defending myself that I didn't ask why she went this far. I pulled up the county development plans again, maps I'd downloaded months ago when I was laying out solar lines, and started comparing parcel overlays. Sure enough, the new draft from the Willow Heights HOA master plan included prospective green space acquisition zones. Guess which lot sat right in the middle of their little vision for community growth? Mine. They didn't want me gone because I was loud or because I grilled too much meat. They wanted the barn, the pond, the road, the hilltop, all of it, folded quietly into the HOA, zoned, taxed, and regulated. "She's been trying to make the case that my land's an eyesore or a threat," I said, "so she can argue for annexation." Troy looked up. "So we hit first." "No," I said. "We show the truth." The next morning, Savannah and I drafted a comprehensive complaint to the County Planning Board. We laid out Karen's attempts to manipulate documents, the unauthorized patrol, the forged reports, and the full pattern of overreach. We included trail cam footage, time-stamped emails, legal boundaries, and every map overlay we could find. Then we copied the local newspaper, 2 regional journalists, and a land rights nonprofit that just happened to love stories about HOA corruption. Karen wanted to build a narrative? Fine. So did we. By Tuesday morning, our story wasn't just a local land dispute anymore. It had teeth. The Carolina Gazette published a front-page spread, HOA power grab. Rural veteran fights back against alleged overreach. They used a photo of my barn with a flag fluttering above it and a caption that read, "Private land, public battle." The piece detailed Karen's attempt to inspect my property, the unauthorized, patrol crossing my fence line, and her history of zoning complaints against neighboring parcels. But what really shook the hornet's nest was the leaked memo. One of Karen's own board members, a woman named Judith, who apparently had enough of Karen's madness, slipped Savannah an internal HOA draft memo titled Phase 2 Integration Outline. It listed nearby properties, including mine, as potential. Realignment candidates, and outline proposed perimeter adjustments to bring them under Willow Heights jurisdiction. They were already planning to absorb my land. That document, combined with Savannah's injunction and our footage, hit like a freight train. The county board called an emergency session. News vans started circling. HOA board members began to panic. One by one, they started distancing themselves from Karen, first subtly, then openly. You could almost smell the rot setting in. Wednesday afternoon, while I was repairing a section of fencing by the creek, a black Lexus pulled up to the gate. It wasn't the sheriff. It was Karen. This time, she didn't storm in. She stood just outside the gate, arms crossed, flanked by a skinny man in a blue blazer and a woman with a massive handbag who looked like she hadn't slept in a week. PR team, probably. "Mr. Goodman," she called. "We'd like to have a conversation." I rested my gloves on the post and walked toward her, just far enough to be civil, but not close enough for her to pull something stupid. "You've had months for conversation," I said. "All you've done is escalate." "I'm here to offer a settlement," she said quickly, glancing at the cameras. "A private resolution. Off the record." I laughed. "Off the record? Lady, I've got 6 trail cams pointed at you right now." Her PR guy stepped forward. We're prepared to offer a compensation package in exchange for a public statement retracting some of the claims against the HOA. We believe this has all been misunderstood. Your team trespassed. You lied to law enforcement. You forged documents. There's no misunderstanding. Karen stiffened. You think you're the hero in this? You're not. You're a man with a shed full of weapons and a delusional paranoia complex. I took a slow breath. You sent armed HOA patrol onto my land. You tried to seize it with fake paperwork. And now you're standing here begging me to walk away because you finally realized I'm not bluffing. The woman with the handbag whispered something to Karen. Karen's jaw clenched. This isn't over, she hissed. Actually, I said, it is. She turned on her heel and stormed back to the car. That night, Savannah filed the full civil suit. It wasn't just for trespassing anymore. It included defamation, emotional distress, libel via mailers, false reporting to authorities, and attempted annexation through fraudulent documentation. Damages, $250,000 minimum. We attached the memo, the patrol footage, the inspector's plates, the zoning overlays, and all of Karen's emails from public records requests. The sheriff's department officially opened a criminal investigation, not just into Karen, but the entire Willow Heights HOA board for misuse of funds and falsification of public documents. But it wasn't until Friday that the final blow landed. I was in the barn reorganizing emergency supplies and hanging a new medkit on the far wall when Troy jogged in holding his phone. Dude, you need to see this. A live stream. It showed the county board hearing, mid-session. A councilwoman stood at the podium holding a blown-up print of the leaked HOA map, the one showing my land inside their green zone. This document, she said, voice calm but firm, was not submitted through proper channels. It has no legal authority, and yet this HOA used it to justify a pattern of trespass and coercion. This behavior is not regulatory, it is predatory. In the corner of the screen, Karen sat slumped at the table, red-faced, flanked by her crumbling board. When the motion passed to suspend the HOA's authority pending investigation, her mouth hung open. Then came the final clip. A vote to formally dissolve the HOA's independent enforcement rights, transferring temporary oversight to municipal control. Applause broke out in the chamber. The stream ended. I leaned back against the barn wall and whistled. Well, boys, I said to the empty air, looks like that shed just survived a war. Saturday morning brought the kind of silence that feels earned. No more patrols, no HOA vehicles creeping near the fence, no Karen screaming into the void. Just the rustle of wind through the pine trees and the steady clank of coffee mugs as my friends and I sat out by the fire pit. Then my phone buzzed. Sheriff Morales, we got a warrant, he said. Karen's house and the HOA office are being searched right now. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled, tipped my mug toward the sky, and muttered, about damn time. By noon, the local news was buzzing again. County officials had recovered stacks of documents, alternate maps, draft complaint letters, financial ledgers showing that Karen had funneled HOA funds to hire a PR firm and 2 private investigators without board approval. But the real kicker? One of the maps was hand-marked to show a proposed community resource center, right where my barn stood. She wasn't just trying to control the area, she was planning to replace me. Later that afternoon, 2 deputies arrived at my gate. This time, not to question me, but to serve notice. Karen Bexley had been formally charged with criminal trespass, falsifying legal documents, misuse of association funds, and assault. When I walked up to receive the copy, the younger deputy gave me a nod and said, she shouldn't have messed with a corpseman and his friends. I watched their cruiser drive off, then walked back toward the barn. There, nailed into the wall next to the old storm radio, I hung the court notice right beside my copy of the property deed. That evening, the boys and I grilled steaks, cracked open a few beers, and quietly celebrated the end of the madness. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Freedom has a flavor best appreciated in silence. We didn't throw a party, not in the usual sense. No invitations, no playlist, no speeches. Just a long table made from 2 old sawhorses and a barn door piled with ribs, brisket, and enough cornbread to choke a politician. Troy slow-smoked half a deer. Cortez brought out a gallon of his retirement bourbon, which tastes like gasoline and burns like justice. Justin set up his Bluetooth speaker and let Johnny Cash do the rest. It was a send-off. Not just for my Marine buddies heading back to their states, but for the chaos that tried to crawl over my fence and tell me how to live. The sun went down in a smear of orange and gold behind the trees. Coyotes yipped somewhere far off. Nobody wore uniforms. Nobody talked about lawyers or courtrooms. We just sat around the fire, chewed meat, passed the bottle, and listened to the wind. I'd installed a new sign earlier that morning, bolted it right into the gate with 6-inch screws and a healthy dose of spite. Clean white lettering on black metal. Private land. No trespassing. Especially HOA. The county concluded their investigation 2 days later. Turns out the HOA, under Karen's lead, had overstepped its legal boundaries for over 2 years. Unauthorized surveillance, improper patrol extensions, misuse of homeowner funds for private legal consultations and lobbying. It all unraveled like wet cardboard. Karen was sentenced to 3 years for a mix of criminal trespass, public misrepresentation, and physical assault. She's banned from serving on any community boards for life. The HOA itself was dissolved by emergency vote after a public hearing, and the land it tried to claim? Reaffirmed as mine, with the court's stamp and signature. I also walked away with a settlement just shy of $180,000, enough to rebuild the dock, replace the roof, and maybe finally fix that squeaky fence hinge that's been driving me nuts for years. I kept blogging through it all. Not out of spite, but because people need to see what happens when you push back, when you stand your ground, when you remember that being quiet doesn't mean being weak, and a barn isn't just a pile of wood, it's a line in the dirt. I still walk the fence every few days, still drink my coffee by the fire, still wave at the few neighbors who don't run their lives off clipboards, and every now and then, someone emails me asking what to do when their HOA comes sniffing around. I usually tell them the truth. Step 1, know your deed. Step 2, know your rights. Step 3, make some Marine friends.